Welcome to the Story of Plainfield, presented by the Indiana Room of the Plainfield-Guilford Township Public Library. Around 1811, Jeremiah and Mary Hadley left North Carolina as part of a wave of Quakers leaving slavery in the South. They headed north with family friend David Carter. Please note that the photos are not representative of the ages the people were at the time we are discussing. They were taken later in life. These people stopped in Preble County, Ohio for about 10 years. Then in the early 1820s, they moved on to settle in Hendricks County, Indiana. By that time, David Carter was married to his wife, Ruth. Then Jeremiah and Mary Hadley's son, Elias Hadley, returned to Ohio about the time he was 21 and married Lucinda Carter, David's cousin. Elias Hadley and Levi Jessup laid out the town of Plainfield around 1832 or 1833. That's why the Plainfield Founders Award is named the Hadley Jessup Founders Award. And here's a close-up of the plat or layout of the town. You will see that it contained 4 original streets: Mill Street, Main Street, Center Street, and Vine Street. Now, as to the naming of the town, there is a local legend that says, being good Quakers, one of the men said, "This town needs a good plain name." And the other said, "Let's call it Plainfield." Because of the Quaker influence, that is why the mascot for the school is the Quaker. You will see that on many things to do with the school, and if you're lucky, in person. Now, the timing of the platting of the town was not coincidental. The National Road, which was basically the first government highway and the main way west for many early settlers, and which became US 40 or Main Street in Plainfield, was surveyed west of Indianapolis in 1827, and it was completed throughout the state by 1834, about which time the town was platted in 1833. So you can see here a very old photo we have, one of our older ones, of the town of Plainfield along Main Street when it was a dirt road, when it was the National Road. You can see the covered bridge on the west side of town over White Lick Creek. Speaking of the National Road, it has to do with the sort of next big thing in town, which was the VanBuren Incident in 1842. Now, President VanBuren had been out of office in 1842, and he was campaigning to be reelected. He was coming through Plainfield, and the people of Plainfield, the story goes, were not very happy with him because he had vetoed improvements while he was in office to the National Road. And in an effort to show him just how much the road needed improving, the story says that they got together with the driver of the coach he was riding in and had the driver run over some roots to an elm tree and dump VanBuren out in the mud. And that tree became known as the VanBuren Elm, which stood on the grounds of the Friends Meeting House for many years until 1928, when it was split in a storm. Therefore, now we have a marker where it was. And even though it was split up in the storm, the wood was saved, some of the wood was saved, and several items were made out of it, including a gavel, which was presented to President Truman in 1948, and which is now kept at the Truman Library in Independence, Missouri. Speaking of the Friends Meeting House, The first Friends meeting at Plainfield took place in an upper room of Richard Mendenhall's home on North Mill Street near Main Street in 1851. The meeting house itself, which also houses the Western Yearly Meeting, was completed in 1858. Here you see interurban cars bringing crowds to the Western Yearly Meeting after the turn of the century in the early 20th century. Unfortunately, in 1913, the meeting house burned. At the time, there was an oratorical contest going on inside with students from the Central Academy next door. When the fire was discovered, practically all the furniture was saved, even the pews seen out here, and even the potted plants. The Friends met in the Central Academy Assembly Room until the building was rebuilt. In 1914, the building was built on the old foundations, using much of the fabric of the old walls. This is the building we see today, with the addition of a 1915 Western addition and a 2000 rear addition. Early in the 1970s, the Friends started a church mouse sale in the basement, which was later moved to the lawn, and there was a parade added into the 1980s, which eventually developed into the town's Quaker Day Parade. Now let's look at some of the older photos we have and sort of a then and now perspective. This is the Dr. Thomas Harvey house, built around 1861. It's also known as the John Morgan House. It's built on the hill west of town. Here, this is actually the National Road going by when it was a dirt road. And it's still here today, both the road as US 40 and the house. This one's a little harder to recognize. It's called the Faucet Block. William Faucet built it. The right side, or the east half, was his home, and the left side, or the west half, was a store. Through the years, it became a hotel, actually several hotels, the Commercial Hotel, the Hendricks Hotel, and the VanBuren Hotel. And today, it houses Headquarters Barbershop. Here we see the Tomlinson Building, built about 1869. It housed Moses Tomlinson's photograph gallery and photography studio. Later, it became the Simon Hardware Building. And here we see it today. The Keeley Institute is an interesting case. It was built in 1874, originally as a hotel, but then it became a commercial in-treatment medical operation that offered treatment to alcoholics. And at one time, there were more than 200 branches in the United States and Europe of what was called the Keeley Institute. And it was widely popular in the 1890s. Now, the Institute offered the internationally known Keeley cure, which drew sharp criticism from those in the mainstream medical profession, because patients received injections of bichloride of gold 4 times a day, as well as other tonics containing possibly strychnine, alcohol, apomorphine, willow bark, ammonia, and atropine. Wow. The Institute did maintain a philosophy of open home-like care throughout its history, with reunions of graduates. The building also housed the Citizens State Bank for many years and still stands on the southwest corner of Main and Center Street. The Knights of Pythias, a fraternal order, built their building in 1900. housed the longtime spot cash store. And now, the florist shop. Now, most early residents of Plainfield and the area were farmers. The first real large employer was the Van Camp packing plant. If you look at the map here, you can see that it was located in the top right-hand corner of the map. If you go up north on Avon Avenue from Main Street to the railroad tracks, what was the railroad tracks at the time. Now, if you go north on Avon Avenue, it's right about the area of the overpass that goes over the Vandalia Trail. The Van Camp Packing Company was the first real large employer, and it opened in 1913 and processed tomatoes from area farmers. It ran until the late 1930s. Here we see a photograph of Plainfield, downtown Plainfield in 1923. At that time, there were about 1,400 people living in town. And that was the year of the next big event in Plainfield's history. And that was the fire of 1923. Here you see a map of the fire. The fire started in Robert Cook's garage, where the star is on the map. It jumped across the alley to the Quaker Oil Garage, operated by Raymond Calvert, which is behind what is now the Quaker Laundromat, I'd say, right around that area. Then it blew east to Dr. C.B. Thomas's home, and the wind shifted and it blew west to the other orange areas along Vine Street. There were sparks even flew across Main Street. The Plainfield Fire Department, the Boys School Fire Department came running. They were assisted by the Indianapolis Fire Department, and they finally got it put out. But it destroyed the Redmonds Hall, the Cook residence. The Redmonds Hall was a fraternal organization on South Vine Street, and the C.B. Thomas house, while Dr. C.B. Thomas was treating people injured from the fire in his office on Main Street. Now, speaking of fire wagons coming from the Boys School became another large employer in Plainfield. In 1867, it was founded as the House of Refuge. In 1883, it was renamed the Indiana Reform School for Boys. And in 1901, it was named the Indiana Boys School, which name it kept until 2005, when the grounds and building were transformed into a pre-release center for adult males. It was a big part of the community for many years, and in 1949, a movie was filmed there, starring Howie Carmichael and William Bendix. It was called Johnny Holliday, and many townspeople were extras in that movie. Here you see a map showing the extent of the land that the Boys School owned to the west of town. It was actually owned by the state, but you can see that it went from US 40 in the north all the way down to 600 south, from 600 east all the way over in parts to 267 or South Center Street. That part along White Lick Creek and South Center Street became Hummel Park eventually. The reason they needed so much land was they were involved in widespread agricultural production. They grew their own food. And you can see here the Apple House, which is at the Al and Jan Barker Sports Complex, which was also originally Boys School land. And that is still standing. That's where they kept some of their crops. The next big employer to come to town was Public Service Indiana. Here you see their new building in 1951 and the streets surrounding it. US 40 is in front of it to the south of the building, running east to west, bisecting the photo. You see Carr Road to the west of the building, to the left of it. And then that next road kind of sticking out into the bottom is actually Maston Street. As we go on, here's the same photo. And just 8 years later, you can see the growth in the town with all the houses that came out. And you can see Van Buren Elementary to the bottom left of the photo. Public service has been a big part of community life over the years, from parades, helping hang Christmas decorations, maintaining infrastructure. Its name changed from PSI Energy to Synergy, and now it's Duke Energy. Here's some more pictures of growth over the years in Plainfield. This is 1976, an aerial photo looking west at US 40 and State Road 267. US 40 runs bottom to top, and it's divided highway. State 267 runs to the left of the picture. Galleon's Trading Post is at the bottom right. Clark's Creek Road is on the right. And Loeffner's Cafeteria is being built in the dirt area on the left side. The Plainfield Water Tower on North Carr Road is visible on the right at the top of the photo. Here's some more growth from 1998. We're looking south at US 40 and Walmart Plaza. Perry Road is being constructed on the left of the photo at the top. The Plainfield Water Tower on State Road 267 is visible on the right to the top. The farmland in the foreground is off County Road 900E, and the white-roofed building on the left along the new Perry Road is the Target Shopping Center. And moving ahead to 2003, we see the Recreation and Aquatic Center at 651 Vestal Road under construction. The Willow Point neighborhood is at the bottom of the photo. The Ridgeline neighborhood is at the left. Franklin Park and the baseball diamonds are there in the center of the picture above the Recreation Center. Now let's look at some notable names from Plainfield's history. This little guy grew up to be this guy. Forrest Tucker, best known to the baby boom generation as Sergeant O'Rourke on the classic TV sitcom F Troop. Believed to be born in the house at the corner of Avon Avenue and Cruson Street in 1919, Tucker continued to visit Plainfield at various times over the years before his death in Los Angeles in 1986. Dell Harris has been the NBA coach of the Houston Rockets, Milwaukee Bucks, and LA Lakers. He's a 1955 Plainfield High School grad and was inducted into the 2010 Plainfield High School Alumni Hall of Fame class. Paul Franklin was a 1923 Plainfield High School grad, the son of longtime police chief in Plainfield, Charles Franklin, also known as Sapp, and he played for the 1931-1935 Chicago Bears multi-year NFL championship teams. Not a sportsman, but a locally known person, Cyrus Hobbs, opened a nursery here in 1875, and the Hobbs nursery still has a few acres growing on Raceway Road. You might know the Hobbs house in town along 40, and you might have sledded on Hobbs Hill behind VanBuren Elementary. If you're wondering where the new building, the Barlow, got its name, it came from this guy, James Milton Barlow, a state senator, a farmer, a Civil War veteran, an all-around Renaissance man in Plainfield. He bought the house you see here, which is located behind the Barlow, in 1895, and the property remained in the family until 2013. And finally, as far as famous people go, at the library we're always being asked about this road. We're always asked, just who is Dan Jones, and why is the road named after him? Well, if you look here, you'll see that next to the road is a piece of property which was the farm of one Daniel M. Jones. And that's who he was. He was a farmer who lived on the land next to the road. We actually have a photo of him here. Here's Dan, his wife Nancy, his sister Mary, and his brother-in-law Enos. We hope you've enjoyed your trip through Plainfield history. Thank you for joining us. Please visit us in the Indiana Room or online at www.plainfieldlibrary.net.